Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?
Yes, I was in my office building, 51st and Park Avenue.
What was going through your mind and what did you see?
Well, my mother called me and she was crying, and she never called me at work. She was saying that something was going on and that she wanted me to leave. And I was only in my 20s, so I didn't know if I was allowed to. And I kept telling her, I don't know if I'm allowed to. I don't know if I'm allowed to leave. My best friend worked a few blocks away from me. So she called me and she said, let's go. We're getting out of the city. And I was like, I don't know if I'm allowed. She was like, I don't care if you're allowed or not. Meet me downstairs. As we were walking, we saw that so many people were walking over the 59th Street Bridge, and we lived in Woodside at the time. And I said, but if this is an attack, they're going to start doing bridges and tunnels next. It was horrendous, and she was like, let's just try. I'll never forget. I remember the exact outfit I was wearing, walking across the bridge. My knees were knocking. I prayed the whole time, and we could see the smoke and everything from downtown. And then that's when she told me that her sister's boyfriend, it was his second day down there on the job, and he died.
Really?
Yep. We were calling him. We were waiting for him to call. Her sister was on the news. She was one of the people holding up the signs that Tommy was missing. And all night we just waited and never heard back.
Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?
Yeah, I sure do. I was in my living room in Massachusetts. I had just moved back from New York a few years earlier. My kids were at school. It was surreal and horrifying. I had to tell my kids when they got off the bus what happened because the school didn't tell them. It was bizarre. My daughter thought it was like a movie I was describing. Then I came down the next day. I'm a photojournalist. I came down the next day to cover it.
What did you see?
Surreal devastation, debris everywhere. The paper was still all on the ground. There was ash everywhere. You saw tears in people's eyes the following days. You saw people walking down the street crying. The city was silent. The city's heart was broken. I had a friend who died a year ago. He was a photographer covering the disaster, and he was crawling around on the wreckage. He had disguised himself as a worker, and he was breathing that stuff, and it killed him last year.
Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?
Yes, I do. I just got married, so I'll always remember my anniversary date, the year rather. And I was on my way to work, and as I was getting ready, they were talking about the first plane that hit the first World Trade Center building, and not thinking anything of it. Still getting ready, and all of a sudden they announced the second one had hit, and I live downtown Brooklyn. So when it hit, I heard the impact, and I was like, wow, that was the second plane, I proceeded to go to work. I worked uptown Manhattan. But as time started going on, I started feeling funny, like maybe I need to turn back around and go back home. And at this point, everything was shut down. And I went into panic because my daughter's in school in Brooklyn, and how do I get to my daughter, and how do I get back home? So, it was very scary. Then I'm thinking of friends and, trying to think of people who worked in that area and hoping they were okay. Those who were really affected by it, that have lost loved ones, I know they feel it every year. It's as they say, there's no time limit for mourning. It can, and just when that day comes up, I know, it can be hard for some people.
Do you remember 9/11?
I live 2 blocks away. I actually was walking my dog, and I went to the corner, and I looked up, and there was a fire coming out of the World Trade Center. And most people told me a small plane hit it, and I went back up to my apartment. I'm a doctor. I was ready to go to work, and I heard a rumbling outside, and the first tower actually fell down when I was walking out the door going to work, and I realized I wasn't going to work that day. I was literally as far as here to the other side of the park away. Sat there, and on TV and CNN I watched the other tower come down, and that was that. All of our freedoms diminished after 9/11. I think it's a horrific event, and I hope it never happens again, and I hope people who have that sort of evil in them don't exist on the earth, but as we all know, they do.
Do you guys remember 9/11?
I do, yes, of course.
Where were you when it happened?
It was my 12th birthday, and I was at school, and I was in art class, and I remember they turned it on the TV.
I was a freshman in college, and they pulled us out of our classes to tell us something had happened, told us that we could make phone calls. And then they put the TVs that rolled on the things. They brought a bunch of them out, and we were watching the news.
How has your world changed after that?
It's a heavy question.
It does affect me because of watching how it affected older people, family, relatives.
Do you think America bounced back from it?
Yes, and I think in general, I believe that humans all over the place we're way more resilient, we're way tougher than we give ourselves credit for.
My name is Edna, and I'm from New York.
Do you remember where you were when 9/11 happened?
Oh, yes. I was walking to the subway to go to work, and I saw a lot of people congregating at the corner of 14th Street and Broadway. And I asked someone what was happening, and they said an airplane crashed into the World Trade Center. And I just thought they were crazy. So I went on my way to work, and when I got there and listened to the radio, that's what I found to be true.
How did you take it? What was running through your mind?
I just couldn't believe it.
Do you remember 9/11?
Yes, I do.
Remember 9/11.
Where were you when it happened?
Downtown.
Do you think America bounced back from that day?
I think America was very slow. How can the United States of America allow one of their planes to go down in Washington, D.C.? It's unbelievable that two planes should be able to knock off the Empire, the
World Trade Center.
Right.
9/11 has changed a lot of people. Almost everyone knew someone who was perished in the 9/11, and you don't forget that. You don't forget it. And it's brought up every time. You see the two stanchions of lights coming up and down, and it's a sad day.
Has he served in the military?
Oh, yes.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Where were you when 9/11 happened?
My wife was on a business trip, and she called me and she said, turn on the TV. And I turned it on just as the second tower was coming down, and I turned it off. I didn't want to look at it anymore. It was very traumatic, actually. I had actually been going through a low period in my life, and I was just starting to come out of it when that happened, so it was a big setback for me. I was really disappointed in how the situation was handled. Afghanistan to start with, and then when the Iraq War thing came on, that really made me mad because it was just the dumbest idea ever.
Do you feel America bounced back from it?
When 9/11 happened, that's when things changed. You used to be able to just get on an airplane. Yeah. No security, no nothing. And it's like being in jail, It's because I actually was institutionalized briefly, and that brings back the memories.
How do you think America could go back to normal?
It's not coming back. It's never going back to that.